All right, everyone. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Popcorn Square. I'm your host, Kage, with
Neff.
And buttons.
And today we got another fun episode for you. Today we are going to talk about some films, The Monkey, EP.71. We're going to talk about the reception of those films. Talk a little bit about Snow White since we're getting some news on that, and we'll talk about what's going on TV. What is everyone watching? So just kind of going around the table here. So I recently saw The Monkey. This one was interesting to me for a number of reasons. One, because James Wan was attached to it, and I tend to like his films. His earlier films definitely saw The Conjuring, Dead Silence, just to name a few. Lately, his later films have been kind of hit or miss. But yeah, Monkey, I wanted to check that out. And Monkey was also based off a short story by Stephen King, an author that I like. I've read quite a few of his books as well as seen some of his movies. So it had the recipe for success. Unfortunately, I'm gonna say that it wasn't great. It wasn't great. I gave this movie a 5 out of 10. It's not what you think. Like, I thought it could be a monkey's paw situation. They said the monkey, whatever, you make wishes, but there's always a dark twist. No, that's not what it was at all. It starts off really serious, and then I would say I took it seriously for about 20 minutes. Yeah, about 20 minutes. And then it just got stupid. It has a lot of really graphic, out there deaths. Kind of reminds me of the later Final Destination movies. When somebody dies in a freak accident, on Final Destination 1 and 2, like the earlier movies, you're like, that's really screwed up, but it could, yeah, I suppose it can happen. While there were things in this movie that just didn't make sense. Okay, like I'll tell you this. Okay, I'll tell you this one. Right in the beginning of the movie, a guy goes to a pawn shop late at night, and he's trying to get rid of this toy monkey. And the manager or whoever's working at the pawn shop is like, "We don't take toys." Oh, it's not a toy. It's a artifact. He just tried to slap some different terminology just so he can get rid of it. And the guy was like, "Oh, well, it looks like a toy." And he goes, "No, no, no, it's not. This is definitely not for kids, blah, blah, blah." And he's sitting there arguing with the shopkeeper, and meanwhile you hear things moving in the background. You hear twang of some twine or something moving. You hear like there's like the entity, I don't know what you want to call it, is at work right now. And so the guy, the shopkeeper, gets impaled by a harpoon gun because of course. And the harpoon gun was wound up, and it was mounted above the door, pointed directly at the register. That's why. You know what I mean?
What were one of the more memorable kills that you saw outside of that one being, you said that was like the initial one?
That was the very beginning of the movie.
Which one would you think was probably the best? Although you didn't care for the movie much, I'm sure there was something that was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Maybe if it was in another film that maybe had a more serious bottom line, it'd be better.
I mean, it's really hard to say, to be honest with you. There was one scene in a car, I guess, and someone's holding someone at gunpoint, and the guy's sitting in the back seat with the gun, pointing the gun at the guy at the driver's seat, and he goes to fire, he misses, shoots a hole through the windshield, and just happens to shoot a beehive hanging off the branch of the tree in front of them, and then the bees come out, and they have you ever seen a line of a swarm of bees go through a bullet hole?
It's new.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, and I'm like, that's weird, and you're thinking they're gonna go in the car and fill up the car and kill the guys. Nope, they went through the little bullet hole, came in the car, and went straight to the guy that pulled the trigger, and the bees went in his mouth, and they kept going and kept going and kept going until they filled up his mouth. And I'm like, this is some bad Mortal Kombat fatality type stuff. It's like, really? Really? Yeah, like it was too hokey to take serious. You know, and I just couldn't take it seriously. And then the jokes that they were trying to pass off just weren't landing because I was having trouble gauging it. You know, is this a horror comedy? Does it want me to take it very seriously? And then I saw the comedic aspect, but it wasn't. At the end of the day, it really wasn't making me laugh. You want to give me a horror comedy? I'm gonna say, what's A Cabin in the Woods? I think that's a fine balance
That came to
of
mind as
comedy
well.
and horror. Yeah, it's like that. That's always a good one to come back to. But this, I don't have any desire to ever see it again. It was just dumb. You have characters that die, and people don't care. They're just like, oh, that's life or whatever. And it's almost as if there was a fourth wall aspect, and they were just aware that they were in a movie and that people were going to die. So who cares? But I wasn't invested in any of the characters. Some of the effects were bad. It just showed excessive buckets of blood for reasons. You know, I don't tend to go for gore.
They were using it as a
horror.
gimmick, you think?
Yes, absolutely. Everybody has, I don't know how many gallons of blood in there. You cut your hand, it's just like, what was that in Monty Python? It was just a flesh wound.
Oh yeah, did they do the whole Quentin Tarantino like blood spray?
Might as well. Actually, yeah, there were quite a few scenes like that, and I was just like, I can't take this seriously, And by the time the movie ended, I was like, thank God, this was stupid. This was stupid. I gave it a 5 out of 10, only because it was stupid. But yeah, guys, if you want to go see The Monkey, I would recommend just waiting for it to stream. And this is like a rainy day, and you have absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing to do, nothing to watch. Bottom of the barrel. Yeah.
Good review there, Kage. And funny enough, as you were speaking on the quality of the film, once again, this is directed by Osgood Perkins. This director also did Longlegs. And that was a pretty good film that came out on Neon as well. The budget for this film, The Monkey, was $10 million. And can anybody at the table guess how much it grossed without looking at their notes? If they wrote it down, does anybody know? Yes or no?
I haven't looked.
You don't know? It's made $53 million, so it's a 5X.
Wow.
So once again, it's going to be one of those ones where you're looking at it like, this is not that good, but the audience has pushed it to a point where it is a blockbuster.
Now,
So interesting.
I will say, when I went to go see it in the theater, the theater was pretty full.
Do you think that having Stephen King's name attached to it is what brought audience?
Perhaps.
Brought the audience in to watch this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I that's a really good, because Stephen King does have an audience both for his books and his movies.
He's got
So-
his followers.
James Wan has followers now. Again, in the earlier days, he had more followers. Now the Nun 2, that's been kind of some people were wishy-washy on what's the doll? Help me out.
Annabelle?
Annabelle.
Yeah.
Because there was Annabelle creation, and like some people were kind of 50-50 on those films. I absolutely love Dead Silence. That's just a good old-fashioned ghost story. But yeah, I mean, I think because it looked different, because it had Wan attached to it, because it had King attached to it, I think that's ultimately what could have put butts in seats. But yeah, my theater, when I went to go, it was pretty full. It was pretty full, and there were people. I had an elderly couple sitting to my left, and I heard the missus not happy on some of those scenes. She got up and left at one point. She was gone for a little bit, like 10 minutes, and then came back. And then I think they might have left early. They were just like grossed out. Like the husband was like, ha ha, like you can tell
He was the one who was there for the.
yeah. Like he knew what he was getting into, but she was just like, oh, I'm gonna go with him because he wants to watch it. But yeah, it was. it would, now that you mentioned that though, it would have been kind of cool if I could just talk to the people around me. Hey, what do you think of that? You know, I didn't like it. That's not something I'll watch again.
Fair enough. Next film, Mickey 17 Buttons.
Okay.
I know you just recently watched this film. Let's hear what you have to say about it.
Yes, so I did actually go see Mickey 17, and it was one that I had been looking forward to since last year. It was supposed to come out last year, and it got pushed. I will say I really had wanted to like the movie a lot, so I went into it with it's got a really good cast. I mean, you have a lot of big names. You got Mark Ruffalo, Robert Pattinson, Toni Collette, Steve, is it Yeun?
Stephen Yeun?
Yeah, Stephen.
Oh,
Yeun.
from Walking Dead?
Yes, from Walking Dead. So, I mean, you've got a lot of really big names attached to it. And so that was what excited me, because I was like, ooh, it's this fun sci-fi. And it was giving me vibes. It reminded me a lot of like a combination of Happy Death Day, where you have like that groundhog situation where, oh, they're dying in interesting ways and they're bringing him back. But it's the sci-fi element of it where, he's basically being, cloned kind of / 3D printed. Like it takes them, like they make it sound like it only takes a couple days to like reprint him out of like this big, machine that they have. And I think the biggest thing for this movie is when you're watching it, all of the interesting elements that make the sci-fi part of it, to where like as somebody who enjoys sci-fi films, go, ooh, that's an interesting thing. I want to know more about that. They just gloss over it and move on. And I feel like talking to other people who were interested in the movie, who either saw it or were like looking it up and trying to do research on it, is it sounds like the book was kind of all over the place. I have not read the book because it's based off of a book called Mickey 7. And talking to some other people who looked into it, the director, who's Bong Joon-ho, who did like Snowpiercer and Parasite, like, so he's a South Korean director and producer, and he's done a lot of big work. So, but he is very kind of niche too. So this fits right in his wheelhouse as far as Mickey 17 goes. But my understanding is he made a lot of changes from the book to make this movie. The book itself is not a comedy, but the movie is supposed to be a comedy. I'm not going to say it's laugh out loud funny, but if you have a dark sense of humor, you will enjoy this. If you
Dark humor. Okay.
If you want like a political take on like today's current, like especially the US anyway, like the society in general, this movie does lean heavily on Mark Ruffalo's character portraying a very Trump-like person. So if you enjoy the satire of that, if you want to see somebody kind of make fun of our political climate, this movie definitely does that. It definitely, shows kind of like the seedy underbelly, if you want to say, of like politics in their current state. Toni Collette, Mark Ruffalo, they're husband and wife in this movie, and I feel like they have a very good chemistry together, but their characters are very over the top. Both of them are very over the top, and one criticism, or I should say a big criticism of this movie for me was, you already know they're the bad guys, right? Like when you're sitting down and they introduce all the characters and you're like, okay, who's going to be our main protagonist and who are the evil people and what are these side characters and everything? You want to know more about the side characters. They even introduce some of these side characters where you're like, ooh, yeah, that's an interesting person. I want to know what's going on with them. And then they just kind of like, nope, sorry, we're moving on. And I'm like, wait, no, go back to what this character, and she lost her lover and now
not even a plot device.
Like,
they're just kind of, hey, here, there, blip.
Exactly. And I feel like maybe the movie got a lot of edits done and it changed it, or maybe it's just another function of the book translating to the movie, where you're like, oh yeah, it wasn't really clearly defined in the book, or maybe it's just like they threw him in there to like as a nod to the book, but then they never really followed through on character
went
development.
into a different direction with it.
Right. So a lot of the things in there, you're like, oh, maybe they were going to split this into multiple movies. One thing I will say, somebody commented that they thought that this would have been way better as a TV series as opposed to a movie. And I do think that as somebody who actually enjoyed a lot of the ideas that were introduced in the movie, I can definitely see how if it had been stretched into a 6 to 10 episode mini series, it would have been way more information available and enjoyable in that sense, because again, Mark Ruffalo and Toni Collette's character, you're like, okay, we get it, you're the bad guys. But too much of the movie, in my opinion, focused on showing, okay, here's the bad guy. Okay, here's the bad guy, and they're doing something worse. Okay, here's the bad guy, and it's even worse than before. You thought it was bad before, and now it's even worse. And they just keep piling on, and I'm like, but this isn't the main part of the story, right? Like, the main part of the story is supposed to be Mickey 17 and what's going on with him and how he's developing throughout the story. Not so much, oh, and here's another bad thing about this character being portrayed by Mark Ruffalo, and we're going to poke more fun at Trump. And it's like, okay, well, I get the commentary on it. I understand it. But honestly, most of the jokes in there were not like laugh out loud funny. They were just kind of like, chuckles, more like, oh, well, sure. All right. I can, okay. Ha.
It's like, I get it.
If it was supposed to be super, like if this was supposed to be a comedy, I feel like they could have done a whole lot better with the jokes. If this was supposed to be a serious sci-fi, then they should have taken out a lot of the stuff that Toni Collette and Mark Ruffalo did, because there was a lot more comedic elements to it with the side characters, with the stuff that they didn't focus on. They have these scientists, right, that are doing experiments on Mickey 17 throughout the movie, and you're sitting there going like, oh, that's where the dark humor comes in, where you're just like one of the scenes is he's going and he's having dinner, and they made it sound like he won this, like, oh, have a dinner with a captain kind of thing, kind of like they do on a cruise ship, where it's like, oh, you can go sit down with the captain and have a conversation with him, and you feel special because you were singled out to sit down and have dinner with him.
Correct.
So they're doing that, and they serve him like this steak that's been genetically modified or whatever. It's like a creation of like randomness, and it poisons him, and then he's like starting to like break out in like this horrible rash, and like it's closing his throat, and all of a sudden it's super painful, and all of a sudden the scientists rush in and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we were testing out this steak and obviously it's not ready yet for human consumption, and he's flopping around on the ground screaming, and they're like, oh, we happen to also have this in development painkiller thing that we were developing, like we should use it now, right? And he's like, yeah, sure, why not, right? And so they inject Mickey with this, and they're like, all of a sudden he's like, oh, it's working, like he's not in pain anymore, and he gets up and he starts kind of stumbling around, and then he falls over again and he starts screaming in agony again, and you're just sitting there and you're like, what in the world is happening? And Mark Ruffalo's character comes over and he's all like, oh, I should just put him out of his misery because obviously he's in pain, that's the right thing to do, right? And Mickey 17, he's Robert Pattinson's character is sitting there going like, no, it's okay, I'm fine, like, and that joke reminded me so much of Monty Python, where they're doing the Black Plague scene, and the guy's like, that's okay, I'm fine, I'm getting better, I feel happy, and he's all about to blow his brains out, and Toni Collette's character is sitting there going like, you can't do that, this is an expensive rug he's laying on, you need to, like, she snatches the rug out, she's like, okay, now you can kill him, and he's like, no, I'm fine, I'm okay, like, don't kill me, and they're like, oh, I don't know, you look like you're kind of, it looks like you're not feeling too well still. And he's like, no, I promise I'm all good. I'll just go back to my room and I'll go to sleep and I'll be fine. Like it'll all be good. Like he's like, well, we could just reprint you, it's fine. We'll just kill you and reprint you. And he's like, no, I'm good. And that kind of humor, like that's what I found funny. Not all of the extra stuff that they tried to do over the top with like Mark Ruffalo. Like a lot of the stuff that was just more ridiculousness with his situation, like his every time he's in a new situation and he dies, like that's the parts where that dark humor comes in and you're just like, oh, you feel so bad for him, but at the same time the way he keeps dying and they keep just reprinting him, you just, I guess you have to have that type of humor. You have to really just, I guess it's niche. It's very niche.
That's what I was about to ask.
It's very niche. It's a very niche type of humor. But if you like that, then you will like this movie. If you enjoy that kind of dark humor, like I said, it's a little bit of a mess with the character introductions because they gloss over a lot of the things to move the story along. But overall, visually, really great. Like, I was impressed with the visuals in this movie. The story could use some work. I feel like they cut out a lot. That's what I'll say. I gave it a 7 out of 10 overall. If you like sci-fi movies and you enjoy the dark humor, you will enjoy this movie. If you want to see somebody make fun of Trump, you'll probably enjoy this movie. But if you're looking for like a serious sci-fi movie, this isn't it. It's not, it doesn't give you enough of the real true elements of a sci-fi movie. They don't go into any of the technical stuff that you might would enjoy. It's very brief to gloss over. Even they tried to introduce, I think, just too many elements that maybe the book went more in depth on, or that got edited so much in the final release of the film that, you know, to cut it down into that 2-hour movie and piece it all together, it just seems disjointed. But overall, I was disappointed. But it's still a solid movie. Like I said, it's still solid. 7 out of 10.
Is this a recommend or do not recommend? 7 is pretty high for
7,
do not recommend.
Well, correct. So again, it's what I said. I had a good time. I enjoyed watching it. I would recommend it only to people who enjoy dark humor.
Do you have like a movie that you can compare this to? That you would think like
Same
if you
vein.
like XYZ, you'll like this. Can you think of anything?
So again, the movies that came to mind that the premise reminded me of this were always going to be, like I said, the Happy Death Day, or if you've seen the TV show Russian Doll. So it's a very similar premise in terms of dying and then coming back. Mickey 17 has that premise where he keeps dying and coming back, but with his memory intact. But each time it's done, I don't know what would be a good comparison, because it is different in the sense that he signed up for a continual death thing.
Yeah.
It's I guess there's certain movies out there that have a heavy sci-fi element to them, but it's more of like a B-rated sci-fi.
Okay.
Like it's not quite as structured as like a good sci-fi movie would be. Like you're interested, you want to know more, but they just don't deliver on the more.
Something that I think about we had Marvel, I think, being the biggest offenders in this. The multiverse aspect. If you can't think of anything to make a story about, why don't we just throw in a multiverse? That way we can do whatever we want. We can throw in as many characters you want and settings and whatever, and we can get away with it. And now I guess we're moving away from the multiverse fad in cinema. Now we're in this reset, because you have Happy Death Day. You just talked about this dying over and over again, but there's a comedic aspect to it. We have Until Dawn that's coming out, that is going to have a group of friends in a house or cabin or whatever, and they're going to die over and over and over again and reset. The day is going to reset. Like, I'm wondering if this is a trend, in movies. I suppose it depends on how they do it. It kind of, to me, in my opinion, it sounds like a little bit of a cop-out. Just like I felt the multiverse thing was a cop out. It was cool when Doctor Strange had his thing, and then
Yeah, it
seeing
seems like
the-
if they can exploit it, then they're gonna go.
yeah. Like if you're
Full throttle
gonna
into
if you're
it.
gonna do it right. Spider-Man, No Way Home, excellent, well executed. Having the Doctor Strange thing, well executed. But then when you try to throw in a multiverse thing, every film, every show, it's like it's not special anymore. And so now we have this is the third film, and I don't know if there's any. I'm sure there's some that I don't know about that are exploring this whole die again, die again, die again, and you're going to keep dying again until you figure out what you got to do. It's kind of like being loaded into the Matrix and you're doing a training program and you can't jump off the building. Okay, reload the program. Let's try again. Try something different. See what it does. See if it moves you forward in the story or whatnot. So just an observation.
Interesting. And so Mickey 17, we talked about budget.
Yeah,
As far as that film goes, thought it was like $150 million. But
118.
yeah, we're getting $118 million, and currently it is sitting at a box office of $62 million. So definitely a tough go for that film. What do you got, Buttons?
So I did think of something that, could be the closest association to this, Starship Troopers. So there's some hokiness to the premise of Mickey 17, and it is certain scenes are very over the top in order to try and get that comedy element in there.
Yeah.
To the extent of also with Starship Troopers, there's a bug infestation. I won't give too much about the movie away, but that's, they're going to a planet, they're trying to colonize it. That was like the premise that's told in the previews for Mickey 17. He keeps dying because of being put in increasingly challenging or multifaceted versions of trying to help establish this colony on this new planet, and there's a bug infestation as well.
Yeah.
So they call them creepers in the movie, but Starship Troopers obviously is an even over the top version in terms of that, and I will say that that's probably the closest equivalent. I do see the potential that this movie could become a cult classic just because it is very niche, but it's hard to tell from this point, and obviously with, the box office not doing that great. I mean, it hasn't done terrible in terms of, it being a niche project, but with that budget being so overinflated, if they had done this movie for like $20 to $30 million, then this would have been great. Like this would have been like a wonderful box office for them in terms of at least they would have made their money back plus a little extra. But $118 million for what it was is definitely not great. They're not going to get their budget back on this. This is the third week for them. So,
Yeah.
and sitting at 62, they're really, like I said, it's
really,
sad.
You know what though? It's really interesting to think about, and we've talked about this before in previous episodes, where horror movies just get away with stuff that other genres don't get away with. I just gave The Monkey a 5 out of 10. And it was like
made a
it
crazy
was
amount of money.
entertaining enough. Like it was a bad movie. I'm gonna call it like I see it. It was a bad movie, but I gave it a 5, not a 4, because I was like, you know what, this is stupid as hell. But I just want to see how stupid it gets at this point. I just want to see how are they gonna wrap up this circus, of a movie. And whereas I just listened to you describe Mickey 17, and I feel like that movie sounds more interesting than the Monkey, but Monkey did better. But
It's
the only reason,
it's not a disinteresting movie.
yeah.
It is a very
But
interesting
it's just
movie.
interesting.
It had flaws. That's ultimately what I'm saying. It had its flaws, and for some people, I sat down and I watched the movie and I enjoyed it.
Well, you just
But-
listening to you describe it makes me want to see it. Like, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to see it like go in the theater and see it. Oh, I'll
It's
give it
definitely a good streak,
I
I would say.
I think I'd be down to give that one a shot. It sounds more interesting because, like I said, if you're gonna show me a horror movie, I tend to gravitate towards paranormal horror as opposed to just buckets of blood that has no substance. Like, I don't care about the shock, visual shock of stuff. I want a good story, a good tale, something like a slow burn movie. And by the time the credits roll, like, it sits with you a little bit. You got to watch Lilo and Stitch after, to get that imagery out. Like, those are the good films, or the good horror films where even though it's freaking sunny daytime outside and the movie ends, you're like, I'm gonna like open the blinds a little more. I'm gonna throw on a Disney movie. I gotta have some levity right now in my life. Like those movies that make you do that during the day, I think are really good. But then you got movies like this, and I'm like, I don't care what the weather's like, night or day. I don't think anything could save it. Nothing could make me, like, there's movies where you have to watch during the day because they're so scary. I don't give a damn what the time of the day is. I'm like, nothing is going to make this good. It's dumb as hell, but you just described Mickey, and I'm like, you know what? It's weird, but that sounds more entertaining. And the only reason Monkey had a higher return, essentially a 5X, it's just because it's horror. It's really weird. And then again, you have the names of Stephen King and James Wan, whereas to promote it. Whereas this, you have Mark Ruffalo, who's well known now for being the Hulk in the Avengers movies. You have Robert Pattinson, which is a legend to all teenage girls for Twilight. Not what I expect you to say. And for the guys, they know him for Batman, and he was not a bad Batman, but seriously, Hollywood, you gave us the Penguin, so come on, where's Batman 2? I need it. You show Joker at the end or whatever, like, I need it. And Oswald Cobblepot is just a badass, but anyway, you made me want to go see Mickey, so I'll definitely give that a go.
Interesting. So, Buttons, we're going to keep it here with you. Let's talk about what's interesting on streaming at the moment. Let's talk about your latest finds.
Okay, so as far as streaming shows go, I mean, I have had a lot of recommendations recently now that I had HBO. So obviously, or Max, HBO Max, right? I did catch up with The Last of Us, so I'm ready for season 2. I am currently almost like done with The Penguin, but as far as new stuff that just came out, like, I really wanted the second seasons of The Night Agent, The Recruit. Both of those are out already, and I've been watching those. And we also had a new show from Hulu, and guys, this one was really good. So I would highly recommend, if you have Hulu, go watch Paradise. It is a bit of a mind teaser, but it's got that heavy sci-fi element to it. So if you like kind of like end of days type shows, but with like a sci-fi element to them, like, this one has it. It's but it's also like a psychological thing. So the premise of that one is you have all of these people who are tied to the president, and all of a sudden the president is found murdered, and you're then trying to figure out who it was that murdered him throughout the show. And I don't want to give too much away about it, because even like right off the bat in the very first episode, it catches you, it hooks you in with, oh man, things are not what they seem. But and then you're like, well, who was it? Who did it? And as you're going through the series, you're basically through like process of elimination, you're going through and you're like, oh, everybody had a motive, but who was it that actually did it? And then at the very end of everything, where it kind of ties back to the beginning, you're like, oh man, this is a lot deeper, has a lot more interesting elements to it. And it's got I think his name is Sterling K. Brown is one of the main actors. And just in general, all of the actors that they got, all the actresses in there, they're really good. They're really well done. The world building that they did, the character building that they did, it really sets it up for future seasons of this show to go on. And it was really worth a watch. So if you guys are looking for something like that's kind of like a psychological, but it's got that futuristic.
Is this like a new age Clue?
No, I wouldn't
Whodunit?
say that. I mean, it is. I mean, it is a whodunit, but it's not a whodunit in the sense of. What was the other one that we really liked? The not the Glass Onion, but the first one, Knives Out. It's not a comedy at all. It's very serious. But the way that they rope you into the different characters and their motives and all of that, it's set up more like Lost, because it jumps between like things that are current and things that happened in the past. And that way it kind of helps tie everything together. Or another one would be Yellow Jackets kind of does the same thing, where it's like stuff that happened in the past and stuff that, happened currently. Although with Yellow Jackets, it's like multiple years like difference. This is more like, a matter of maybe just a couple of months or even a couple of weeks, all the way up to like at most, I think like 10 or 15 years for some of the characters.
Yeah, I'll just throw this out there. So I think I might have talked about this on a past episode. So I'm still watching Solo Leveling anime. Very, very good. Episodes always end on a cliffhanger. They really know how to get you, because it feels the episodes are like 30 minutes, but damn, it hurts when it revs up and it starts going to another storyline, and then all of a sudden it cuts to the outro sequence. Like, no, just put all the episodes so I can freaking binge it. And if you look at the forums online and on
The
Facebook,
weekly.
on Reddit, everyone's pissed. They're like, oh, we want to know. But then you got the other people who read the manga and they're like,
We already know.
we know what's coming, and you are not ready. So it's like, oh man. So, that's my big thing that I'm watching right now. I also started watching The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live. I was a huge Walking Dead fan.
Now this was a spin-off. What are the main characters for that one again?
For The Ones Who Live, it stars Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick Grimes, and then Denai Guerrera, who plays Michonne.
Okay,
on
so
there.
it's Rick and Michonne's story.
Yeah, it's Rick and Michonne's story. If I know a lot of people dropped off various stages of Walking Dead. I dropped off for a little bit, but it was because I was in the middle of moving and I got busy and I forgot about it. But I eventually did go back and watch and get caught up and such. I haven't watched the other spin-off series with Maggie and Negan, because it's a whole show about them.
Or the one with
Well, I don't remember if the
Carol
one
and
Daryl.
Daryl, yeah.
I don't know if that one got canceled, because there's something that happened. Like, I think Michelle Bride couldn't do it. Like, she was originally slated to be on the show, and then something came up, and so she was taken off it. I don't remember if they canceled. I'll have to go back and look that up. But as far as the Ones Who Live, this one actually takes place. The story takes place right after, or I shouldn't say right after, but
shortly after.
well, like there's a time skip, but if you watch The Walking Dead, the original show, you see that Rick, like, quote unquote, dies. Like, it's not looking good for him. He's got a horde of zombies coming after him. He's on a horse, and the horse bucks him off, and he's bleeding out, like he landed on some rebar or whatever. And it's like, oh man, it's not good. And he gets off the horse, and the zombies go after the horse, and now he's like walking away. He's limping, and it's like, you're watching this, like, he's done. And you see him lay down or whatever
This is
on the
the
floor,
end.
and then the bridge explodes, and it's like, no, they scream. And, like, that's how the main cast sees him. Like, Michonne's screaming, oh my God, like, he just ate it right now. And then it shows a helicopter coming in and scooping up Rick's body. And you don't know who that helicopter is, why they
He's
took the
just
body.
gone.
You don't know if he's dead. Did they take his body to experiment on it? Who are these people, and why would they do that? And it just freaking ends, and you don't know anything. Well, this takes place, I don't know how many years after, and you see Rick, and you learn about the group that picked him up and why they picked him up. and now his mission is to get away from these people and try to get back to his family,
To everybody else.
to everyone else, get back to Michonne. And so you have that continuity between the show and all that stuff. So it's like, okay, I want to see this. And I do want to go back and see the show with Negan and Maggie working together, even though Negan beat Glenn's skull in, which is I'm sorry.
Still kills
that
me.
one that was sorry, folks. Sorry to bring that back.
I know that's what happens, but trauma.
Yeah. That was a really hard thing to stomach, but damn, was it good television. How they got away with putting that on TV is beyond me. But yeah, I'm watching that. Some things to look out for. There is, I think it's April 13th. I think. Let me confirm before I open my mouth. Yeah, or sorry, April 3rd, The Devil May Cry adult anime comes out on Netflix. I've seen clips and previews of it. I'm intrigued. And it's not, by the way, it is not the first time Devil May Cry has been made into an anime. I want to throw that out there. This is like purely a Netflix thing, and that can be good or bad, but I'm open-minded. And then, of course, the big one is, April 13th, Last of Us Season 2. And we are going to see how the non-gamers respond to everything that's about to go down. It's either going to piss a lot of people off and turn them off, like Glenn dying in Walking Dead, or it's going to make them more intrigued. I'm going to watch the whole thing because I just want to see how they do this. The first season was a 10 out of 10, which is something I can't say very often for shows. When I watch a show, you might have like some bad episodes, but like Penguin's pretty solid. 9, 10 out of 10 across the board. I can't really give you a weak episode. I really can't. That's just gold, And my only criticism of the Penguin is that it freaking ends, and I'm like, I gotta know more. Just kidding. You gotta wait for the movie. Oh, we're not gonna get a movie, but here's Mickey 17. Screw that. I don't care about that. Show me the freaking Batman. How dare you hype me up and then it's like, nah. What you're supposed to do is time it to where a trailer comes out for the new Batman movie right after the show ended. That's what they should have done.
I think I heard a rumor that, they were, as far as Pattinson reprising his role as Batman, they were waiting to see how Mickey 17 performs. I don't know if there's any actual truth to that.
That's not fair.
But
that's a completely different thing. And he's already
exactly.
proven himself to be a good Batman. That has no relevance.
The point that I'm trying to make with that is it's like, okay, I don't think anybody who watches Mickey 17 would look at Pattinson's portrayal and his acting and go, oh, he doesn't deserve to be Batman now. Like, actors get put in bad
weird
movies
roles,
movies that just perform poorly, and it doesn't have any impact on future roles that they may get in terms of if they've already been established as that character. Like, nobody's sitting there going like, oh, well, Chris Evans, right? Like, he did several movies throughout the entire time that he was portraying Captain America. Nobody was like, oh, we watched this movie and we didn't like him in it, so he can't be Captain America anymore. Like, nobody was doing that. So I think with Pattinson, I think if he wants to do it, and I don't think they're going to look at Mickey 17 and be like, oh, yeah, after you did that terrible movie, we couldn't possibly let you be Batman.
Yeah, I haven't seen Mickey 17, but even if I did, it wouldn't change my point of view as Pattinson as Batman.
He does a really good job acting in that role. I just feel like the movie, it was flawed not because of the acting. It was flawed because the way that it was pieced together.
Right.
Like, I feel like there was parts of the movie ended up on the cutting room floor that shouldn't have, or maybe they just needed to piece it together a little bit differently. But I do think, as far as shows coming out, there's definitely a lot more coming. But I will say this, guys. I have been having way more fun watching the television shows that have come out this year than I have the movies.
Yes, I can agree with that. You know what?
I feel like they're stronger. I feel like they're
Yeah.
stronger than the movies that
Yeah,
they put out so far.
absolutely. You know, I've been really busy outside the podcast, you know, work and such, and I popped on Netflix just last night, and I was like, wow, there's a lot of stuff that got added on. Even some stuff it says it's on its way out soon. I'm like, wait, I didn't know that was on there, so I got to catch up before they start moving. And then I was like, man, I got to look back at all the other streaming services that I have. You're absolutely right. There's some bangers out there. And honestly, with prices of everything going up, heck, if I can get some entertainment at home on the stuff I'm
That's
already
true.
paying for, win-win. Let's go.
Well,
I welcome it.
You know, everybody was talking about the fact that Netflix raised their prices again, and
Yeah.
I understand. Like, it's hard to sit there and say that. How do you justify paying that much money, especially if you have multiple streaming services and you're also going out and watching movies, and you're also paying for cable.
I just dropped mine. I might have mentioned that our last episode or
Yes,
so.
yes.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. I dropped Disney because it was the one that I was watching the least. Max, Netflix, and Prime are my bread and butter. Oh, and of course, not to be outdone, Crunchyroll, because I'm getting my anime fix on there.
Right. But I feel like, unfortunately, and I'm sure we'll discuss this later on as well, more in depth, but I feel like it is, compared to what we've seen so far performing this year in the theaters, I feel like people are watching more at home. They're streaming more
Yeah.
shows. And honestly, all the streaming services thus far, the shows that I have watched, have been very good, have been very entertaining. And I think that the production quality behind a lot of, like, Max has really great production quality. Even Paramount Plus, a lot of what I've been seeing from them. Prime is stepping up their game as well. I mean, I'm currently watching Reacher, which is another one that I forgot to mention earlier. But there's so much stuff out there, guys, that you just really have to give a chance to some of these streaming services. Go online, do your own research. If you have a genre, like type in, you're like, hey, I like action adventure, or I want, TV sitcom type shows, and they have an
Yeah, there
endless
definitely
amount.
seems to be a shift. I talked about this on the weekly that I believe if you're going to see any type of like new creativity, new stories, you're seeing those risks taken with the streamers rather than
Right.
the big Hollywood studios.
Well, we already saw Apple TV pushing a lot of their movies, and they haven't been performing that great. Netflix has the same problem, I think.
The
where they
Electric
put-
State is out now.
Oh, Electric State. Yes, that is one. That was
Are you
with
interested buttons? Yeah.
Chris Pratt, right?
And Millie Bobby Brown.
Yes, and Millie Bobby Brown. It does look interesting. The premise is, again, it's a very sci-fi heavy role or genre, but it does look interesting. Chris Pratt, he's a comedic, portrayal as far as, in the previews, what I saw. Very snarky. He's almost like Ryan Reynolds light. I feel like he keeps getting typecast in these roles, but
good
the
comparison.
personalities are very similar, and the roles that they tend to take are very similar. But I know that Netflix and Apple TV and even Prime have been putting out movies that are of a higher caliber, to where you sit down and you watch them and you're like, man, I would have thought that this would be in theaters. Like,
Right.
it's that good of the quality, and even enjoyability of them, to where you're sitting there going like, yeah, I will watch this again. I could definitely see myself sitting down and just keeping the streaming service just to watch these movies, because they put out really good
Yeah.
content.
I think about, when we talk about this, I'd say right now, Prime is probably my weakest
Prime.
right now, because I'm a fan of the Has Been Hotel.
Yes.
It's so messed up, and it's dark humor. It's a cartoon. Absolutely not for kids. Do not let your kids watch that.
But it's got some fun musical numbers.
It does. It well. What's cool is the entire cast is Broadway people, and the songs are catchy. You know, screwed up, but they're catchy. And season 2, I think that's rumored to come out. It could come out either later this year, early next year. Fallout season 2, we haven't gotten a date on that, but Fallout and Hazbin Hotel are probably the biggest things to me on Prime, and as long as they're not on, I haven't even touched it.
Yeah.
I probably should go back. Like I said, I need to hit back, because last night I went on Netflix. I was like, oh man, there's a surprising amount of good stuff on here that's on its way out that I didn't even know was there in the first place. Movies that I talked about streaming in past episodes, and they're out on stream now. So I got some homework, if you will.
I think Netflix does a little bit better job like promoting their own shows, so that when you first log in, you're like, oh, hey, this is what's new, this is what's out,
Well, yeah, it has
or
that.
this is what's coming soon. Paramount doesn't do that very well. They're usually kind of like, you get on there, they've got their banner, this is out now.
So they don't have
where was the preview for this like 2 months ago to get me excited?
It doesn't
about
have like
this?
an algorithm that knows the types of things
Well,
you
it'll
watch, and it goes,
suggest-
oh, here's this based on that.
It'll
that you
suggest
watched.
it, but what I'm saying is I want to know about it maybe a month or two out.
Sure.
Like I want to know like, oh, hey, this is what you're looking forward to this year. I have to like deep dive to
You gotta
find
dig for
stuff from Prime, and I feel like it's one of those things where it's like you got to do better to get people to, I don't know, maybe they just figure like everybody who has Prime is going to keep Prime because they use it for Amazon free shipping, and so you're either going to pay attention to it or not.
Right.
But as
They got
more
me
of
by
these-
that, yeah.
But they started adding ads into their stuff too. So now you've got to watch ads when you're watching the shows or even the movies. So I mean, they have an ad-free service
screw
as
that.
well. But again, you're sitting there going like, okay, if you're going to start adding on extra, ads and things like that, you got to at least promote your own stuff.
Correct.
Like throw in some previews. Like keep me wanting to come back for more. Don't just be like, oh yeah, I came in, I'm going to watch this show. And then you're going to throw up here, oh, there's also this show we think you're going to like. But it's like, otherwise I might not show up at all. I might be like, well, I watched it, and until
through
I
the
know
cracks,
what's
or you
coming
didn't
out,
watch
I'm
it,
not
yeah.
coming back.
What does everyone here think about Snow White and the projections for that? We'll make this one pretty quick because obviously the movie's not out yet. We're just kind of figuring out where we think it's going to go box office wise.
I'm even surprised I'm going to be blunt. I don't even know how this movie's even coming out. There's so much.
Disney scaled back the premiere, all types of stuff.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. There's so much controversy.
The leading actress,
Rachel
all of the
Zegler.
drama around her.
It's war between. It's open season between Zegler and Gal Gadot. Gadot, sorry, folks. It's open season. There's beef between them. Then you got the whole, we're not going to use little people. We're going to use CG doors. Like, there's controversy.
Which used to be regular sized people before that.
Yeah. So I mean, it just the more you look into it, the worse it gets. And it's just like, how about you guys just not do this movie and just get a completely new cast with no beef, no controversy. Go back to the drawing board. And when you do this, why don't you wait like 5 years until everyone forgets about this? Because this is like Fantastic Four failing, and 2 years later, oh, by the way, here's another one. It's like, yo, the wound is still fresh. We still remember. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's been so much
Good point.
shenanigans with this film.
Yeah, and drama.
I don't care. Now, and understand, I tell you this all the time, folks. I am into the paranormal horror. I like sci-fi. I like action. Here at the Popcorn Square, we kind of cover everything, you know what I mean? And so I kind of like the action, the sci-fi, and the horror. But even still, I do occasionally like those feel-good movies. I like some older Disney films, Cool Runnings. That's one of my faves. Lion King, Lilo and Stitch.
Moana
Emperor's
2.
New Groove, Moana 2, yeah. So I like that stuff. I do like it. And that being said, if I heard that Snow White was coming out live action, not typically the movie that I would go for, but at the same time, I'm willing to give it a chance. I'm willing to give it a chance, but I'm not willing to give this a chance because they haven't said one good thing. All the poison between, like the beef, the sheer aggression between the two leading actresses, the controversy with the dwarves, that like no matter how you slice it, I'm like, Disney, just stop because you put this on, no one's gonna watch it.
So I will say this. So originally I saw only the teaser trailer for this, and it was just a very brief, like 15, 20 seconds where they just were kind of like hi ho, and like they show like silhouettes of marching, and that kind of stuff, and then I think it was just like the banner of the title, right? And then I watched the newest trailer.
Uh-oh. I haven't, so I'm waiting.
And I had heard, different things about it, in terms of what the look was and what they were going for with the movie. Honestly, when I think back, Snow White was never one of my favorite Disney movies, mainly because the actress that they got to play Snow White, her voice bugged me when she was singing. Like, it was very warbly, I guess is the easiest way I can explain it. But I didn't care for it, right? I much liked the later movies that Disney did. But regardless of all those things, the main story of Snow White is very simplistic and kind of what Kage was saying. It's lighthearted in the sense of, she gets, sent off to live in the woods, and she has these 7 dwarves that are helping her, and even though she's had to flee her evil stepmother, it's still lighthearted overall, the tone of it, except for a couple little moments, right? There's just like a few little darker moments in it. This new version, when I watched the trailer for it, I was like, oh my gosh, they are making this not look like a kid's movie. This looks dark. This looks super dark, and it looks like there's like much heavier like action sequences. They're trying to make it almost like, do you remember a couple of years back they did the Snow White and the Huntsman, where it's like it's a battle between her and the queen.
Yeah,
and
I do remember
like,
that.
it felt like that more, and instead of, I guess maybe they were trying to make it more girl power, because in the original, obviously Snow White, she eats the apple, she goes to sleep, her prince comes and wakes her up, and that's the big to do. This almost seems like they're gonna hash it out, her and the queen, and make this all
Well,
about.
you gotta have a battle. You gotta have conflict or something, because
Well,
like
I'm
in
not-
the 1960s or whatever, when we were watching the old Disney, it's like you're a kid, you plop them in front of the TV, Disney Channel, they're satisfied. They don't care how the story don't need to be that deep. But we're making a movie for parents who were young, who watched the cartoon one,
Okay.
to show their children, and so we have to liven it up a bit. We gotta get some action. How do we get some?
Just before this, we talked about the fact that Snow White was like Disney's very first
True.
animated full-length feature.
Oh, I didn't say I
So
didn't
we're
say I
talking about
agree with it. I just said
19
I understand.
We're talking about 1937. Our generation wasn't watching this back when we were kids in terms of, from the original standpoint. We're
no.
talking about,
I didn't
most
mean
of
literally.
Well, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that it would be more like the boomer generation being like, I'm going to take my grandkids to this film. And I don't think that they want to take them to see like this huge battle scene of Snow White. They're wanting to take them to see something lighthearted and fun. And there's forest critters all over the place helping her do her chores like Cinderella was.
This might seem like a concept that's out of its time. It just won't
Yes.
work in modern era of filmmaking.
That's a good way to sum it up.
It's an
Because
edgy.
there's it just won't work.
It's an
That's why I think
edgy Snow
Cinderella
White.
didn't work.
It's an edgy Snow White, and I'm just kind of like, well, why does it need to be edgy? Snow White is, I mean, I understand, like, again, there's some darker elements, some darker themes to it, but if you're taking your kids to see a Disney movie, why do you want, like, super heavy, dark elements to this? I mean, don't like your stepmother because, she's going to poison you and try and kill you. It's like, that was already a dark theme.
Yeah, it's like the virtue signaling.
And now it seems like it's even more intense, like just some of the dialogue that you see between them early on. And again, to your point, Neff, Cinderella had that too, where you see that edginess with the conflict between Cinderella and the stepmother.
Yeah.
Whereas the original one, sure, there was conflict between
I
them,
think
but
if you
she
make
never
it-
verbally
Right.
got
I think if you
into
do
it.
make it edgy, you have to do it from the perspective of the antagonist, like how they did Maleficent. Then it's accepted. But if
Right.
it's not from her perspective, then it's like,
Cruella.
this doesn't fit. Like,
Yeah, they
see
did
what
that.
I mean?
Maleficent, yeah. I
Yeah.
think what was the other one that they did besides,
They've done a few.
Well,
I can't
right.
think of them off top. The live actions you're talking about?
no,
Cruella got her own movie.
Cruella got,
Oh, reverse
Maleficent
perspective.
got her
yeah,
own movie.
so I mean, I know they've done that with Cruella and then obviously Maleficent movie, but I feel like there was a couple others that they've
There
done.
probably has been.
I'm gonna throw a monkey wrench in that. Yo, I want to see a live action of Jafar.
Oh,
I mean, it'd be a CG Iago. We don't have Gilbert Godfrey no more, but
Iago from the
Yeah.
from the live action.
So
with
we
Will
said the
Smith.
budget for Snow White was $250 million?
209.
209.
they ain't making
Actually,
that
a
back.
little lower than I expected there.
Still crazy.
They're not
What
making that
do
back.
you guys think this film's gonna do? I think I
Mm-hmm.
said 250
Uh-huh.
tops,
I
only because they're gonna get the kids.
that is
And there's
hard,
probably a lot
but-
of people that don't know who Rachel Zegler is. They're probably just like, oh, it's a Snow White movie.
And
The
it's
kids will
Disney.
like it. It's Disney. Whatever, something to do.
I don't know. I kind of feel like I still feel like there's a lot around this that parents are even looking at it going like, this looks like a train wreck.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to go lower. I'm going to say that they're only going to hit like 200.
So
Yeah, I'm gonna
just
agree
hit
with
production
Buttons.
budget. All right. So Kage is
and-
at 200, Buttons at 200. I'm at 250.
And
That's still a
guys-
flop.
It is.
And guys, I just want to throw this out there too. Keep an eye out when this movie comes out. Reach out to your friends out there that have kids and just ask the parents. Like ask your friends who have kids. Like, hey, what did you think? From an adult that had to sit in, what did your kids think? Were they entertained? Were they engaged? In the
Or
film?
were they not interested
Or were they
at
not
all?
interested at all? Because I'm really curious. Because we are talking about this as adults. Like, would we find
Yeah.
this
We're not the
entertaining?
target
We're not the
audience.
target audience, right?
Correct,
So
correct.
I'm curious, what do parents think? We got parents out there that are our ages.
And what did their kids
What did their
think?
kids think? That's I want to know.
Interesting. Another film before we wrap this up that I don't know if anybody knows about is Ash. And that's
No.
directed by Flying Lotus and stars Isaac Gonzalez. It's kind of like a sci-fi horror film, so I think it's something Kage might be interested in. But that releases next week.
Oh.
I think the production, as far as marketing behind it, has been kind of slow, but it's definitely something. I saw the first trailer for, I believe it was yesterday, but the trailer released like 3 or 4 months ago, but I heard some rumblings about it, so
Popped back up on
I
the
don't think it
radar.
looks like a A-level sci-fi film, but I think it's like a solid B. I could see it on streaming personally, but it still might be something that is decent. So definitely something out there for everybody else to think about. That's more adult-centered. But overall, pretty good episode today. Covered a lot of bases. Talked about the monkey, Mickey 17. We talked about Snow White. Talked about what's interesting on television right now, and even spoke about Ash a little bit there towards the end. Overall, pretty good conversation. So, ladies and gents, with that being said, please let us know what you thought about all these topics. Did you see the monkey? Did you see Mickey 17? Are you going to watch Snow White? Do you know anybody that's going to watch Snow White? Also, let us know what you're streaming on TV. We're going to be ramping up a little more moving into the month of April. Obviously, Buttons and Kage brought up The Last of Us Season 2. And on top of that, I had just told Buttons about this, and it was just recently announced from Netflix. Black Mirror Season 7 is going to be premiering on April 10th. So 2 big heavy hitters right there. Definitely want to know what everybody thinks about that. With that being said, I'm Neff signing off with
Kage.
And Buttons.
Please subscribe to the channel. Share this video with a couple of friends and colleagues. Let them know to subscribe as well. Everybody ring the bell for notifications so you get updates as soon as we post on our channel. And with that being said, it's Neff and everybody at the Popcorn Square signing off. Be safe.
Be safe.